Hello everyone, welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today's Monday, October 23rd, 2023. I'm your host, Bradley Eli, and I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Trey Brock and Christine Niles. A musician who makes contemporary Christian music is getting called out on social media for gender bending. Derek Webb, a Nashville-based artist who recently put out a Christian rock album, shared last week a photo of himself wearing a dress to the Dove Awards, an award show for contemporary Christian and gospel music. Also last week, Webb shared a photo of himself posing with a drag queen who goes by the stage name Flamey Grant. The drag queen also attended the Christian Awards show last week. Earlier this year, Flamey Grant, believe it or not, put out a chart-topping album of contemporary Christian music. The album is titled Bible Belt Baby. It was the first time ever that a drag queen made a contemporary Christian album. Derek Webb faced backlash from Christians on X, the platform formerly called Twitter. Many blasted the photos as repulsive and said he and Flamey were making a mockery of women. When he wears a dress to the Dove Awards, now that's arguably the biggest night in Christian contemporary music, the CCM, and invites a drag performer, Flamey Grant, to join him, he's really trying to make a statement out there. There's no question about that. And true, there were many reactions on X, Twitter, if you will. Pastor XY said, "This is what being deceived by demons in real time looks like." Another, Tom Pappert, "You really had to bring your fetish to a gospel event, huh?" And Leslie says, "Nasty, embarrassing, and disgraceful." So their response to it really was pretty negative out there, and rightly so.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there's so many different angles to this. First of all, for those who are unfamiliar, Flamey Grant is mocking a very famous Christian female singer named Amy Grant. You know, she won all sorts of awards, very, very famous. So it's mocking her. But it's a Protestant setting. And as we know, because Protestants don't follow the magisterium, well, once you chuck that, you chuck an objective standard by which you measure doctrine and morals, things like that, well, almost anything goes, really. So in one sense, it's not that much of a surprise that this sort of stuff would creep in to this sort of thing. It's good that he's getting pushback. I mean, I think the first comment that you read is the most accurate. It's demonic. I mean, that's what that is.
And I think most, when you think of Christian music, most Christian music is Protestant. And so, like, when I'm thinking about music, especially with regard to my own faith or something, okay, does it sound good? And two, obviously, the more important would be, is it promoting truth? Is it promoting, what the gospel actually teaches, what the church actually teaches? Those would be like, I don't know, my two requirements for that. So Protestantism, there are songs out there that are kind of neutral. They sound good, they're kind of neutral, and whatever. But most of it would it doesn't have that proper doctrine. And so if it sounds good, and you see a lot of this with Hillsong is a big movement. I know we might talk about that a little bit later, but Hillsong, the music, for most people, it sounds good. But again, the theology is all over the place. And so it's not doing what music ought to do. It's elevating your mind to God, elevating your mind to what He's revealed to us. And if the music sounds good, but it's all over the place theologically, it's not doing that purpose.
And I'd even take exception to sounds good. Now, if it appeals to the lower banal emotions out there, you can have songs from the, Marilyn Manson can be taking a tract out of the gospel, and the way that they're just banging the chords and the drums, and it's really not reverent whatsoever, and it's really vulgar and demeaning to the lyrics itself. I mean, we're going to get into it later on, but when you have Gregorian chant, and polyphony and those things, there's an elegance to the music that lends itself to enhancing or showcasing the text.
There's like an objective beauty to it.
There is, and so when you have the music and I've been swimming in this water for 30 years. I mean, we had, I know kids at summer camp and things that in schools that wanted to have, or the parents even thought, well, if you let them listen to all this, Christian rock, which sounds just like rock music, but the texts are pretty much okay. Well, the problem is they'll put a little words in here or there which completely throw the text off, and you don't really realize it. You almost have to go through a theological analysis of it. But the music itself, very, very banal, and it's not lifting people up to God.
Yeah, like it doesn't even sound good to begin with. That's when I was at the high school, like a lot of the kids, they like to listen to rap, and obviously the lyrics are just horrible, but it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good. It's all over the place. People are just kind of talking into a mic. Same thing with I don't understand people who I had friends growing up. They would listen to like metal, like heavy metal screamo music. It's like, it sounds like you're in hell or something. Like, why would you listen to that to begin with? If it had good lyrics, if screamo had actually good lyrics, I still wouldn't listen to it because it just sounds like it sounds horrible.
The thing is, it resonates with something inside of them. So there's something jaded, broken, raucous inside. Webb, though, this Derek Webb, it's not the first time he wore dresses. This isn't a one-off thing. We got to put that out there right off the bat. Christian Post article noted that Webb's wore dresses multiple times in recent months, even as a YouTube channel showing other instances of wearing dresses. So for him, it's not a one-off thing that he just, I'm just going to do this tonight or anything. It's been a fetish for a long time and a kind of a mindset or a lifestyle that he's actually been revealing over a long period of time. And that also affects your music, the type of music we're saying sounds good or not, and the lyrics in there, all of that you're putting into the person, and the music become kind of a one-statement thing.
Unless people think that we're just trying to pick on Protestant musicians, we're not. We have a fair share of scandals among Catholic musicians as well. David Haas, for instance, massively popular in the Gather hymnal. Lots of his songs are being played in churches today, still being played, but big scandal about him a few years ago. Allegations of sex abuse, including sex abuse against minors. And then we have Dan Schutte, who there's evidence that he is likely, I don't want to come out and say it, but likely homosexual. This is a man who was part of the St. Louis Jesuits, very much known, Society of Jesus, 1970s, the folk worship guitar, that sort of thing, very pro-gay. And yet this is the kind of music that seems to be played in the majority of Catholic parishes today. And I hate it. It's like I hate it every single time I come into one of the parishes. If I have to go to a Novus Ordo and you hear a David Haas or Marty Hagen or Dan Schutte hymn, and it's just, they tend to be extremely saccharine. Okay, sometimes they're theologically off base. They very much appeal to your emotions rather than having solid theology. And the worst is when they play them after communion, when you're trying to pray and focus on our Lord, and then someone gets on the piano and starts banging out one of these things and performing like a concert, and then people like actually clap. That's happened before, It's just like, it's not conducive to worship.
Are those, just curious, 'cause are those the more, like if you go to a Novus Ordo, are those the songs you're going to run into if you go to just a random Novus Ordo? Yeah. Just
to run. I mean, there doesn't have to be any liturgical abuse. This is just your average run-of-the-mill
gather in, worship hymnal, the praise and worship. Those things are just a lot of chock full of this type of stuff. And it really is telling, too, that he would feel that he's able to come out like that, that there's enough acceptance of the LGBT lifestyle to put himself out there that where he wouldn't think he'd be canceled as a musician. And that culture, two-faceted here, of this acceptance of a lifestyle and acceptance of this type of music, which has really been around for a while and growing for a long time. It's all hearkening to our Protestantized, and I even loop 60% of Catholics at least or more in there, with Protestantized mentality that who am I to judge? Everything goes. Accepting of everything. Toleration is the virtue, which it isn't at all. And so this is where we're at as a music industry. Is converging with lifestyle, is converging with religion. All of that really is making a single convergence today, which is it's really problematic for our culture at large, especially all the young kids out there.
Yeah, and I want to read a quote from this is from Vatican II on sacred music, which is what we're kind of alluding to here. Sacred music here, talking about Gregorian chant, sacred polyphony in its various forms, both ancient and modern, sacred music for the organ and other approved instruments, and sacred popular music, be it liturgical or simply religious. And then it gives, Vatican II gives Gregorian chant a pride of place, is the quote from Vatican II. And so, when you think about sacred music, we're typically thinking, okay, what music is being played at Mass, like we were talking about just now. what the music should be doing, it should be evoking the proper disposition. Everybody goes back and forth about Novus Ordo, TLM, and nobody ever talks about, at least in the circles that I'm in, nobody ever talks about the proper disposition you're supposed to have. So whatever mass you go to the mass is going to evoke, is going to pull out the proper disposition, that broken spirit and contrite heart, which is what we're supposed to have in mass. So that's what the music should be doing. So if it's, be it, Gregorian chant, or, it doesn't have to be Gregorian chant, but if it's something else, that seems like the rule should be, is it pulling that out of the person that's there? Is it pulling that out of the, the priest or the lay person that's sitting there in the pews, pulling out that broken spirit, contrite heart? That's why, to me, I grew up, when I converted in middle school, my family came into the church. It was at a big mega Catholic church, and they had, I remember my brother and I would sit kind of in the back, and they'd have a bunch of guys up in the front our age, and they were kind of just, it was like a rock band. They had a huge band up there, and my brother and I always hated that. It was always just weird. But to me, that's not something, the rock, the kind of crazy instruments going crazy, that's not something that's going to pull out that proper disposition. I think there's a way to do that without Gregorian chant, but insofar as that's what the music is doing. And Gregorian chant is kind of objective, in my opinion. Like, there's no way that Gregorian chant doesn't pull that out of somebody, and I think that's why Vatican II is saying it has pride of place in the liturgy.
And the science bears it out too. People have actually done analysis of your brain waves on different kinds of music, and they've shown that during Gregorian chant actually stimulates alpha brain waves, because there are different kinds of brain waves. Alpha brain waves, they're on a scale of 8 to 12 hertz, and they're emitted when the body is in a very calm and relaxed state. It's very conducive to prayer, to self-reflection, to self-knowledge, things like that. And so it really is objectively the best music you can have to help you to pray, to focus on why you're there. Whereas you have like rock music and percussion, that sort of thing, it's like the worst music possible to help, because it's very intrusive and distracting. And what's very interesting too is just the effect of music, for instance, on plants. They've done so many experiments that prove that not only does music affect plants and their growth and well-being, but the kind of music that you play. So for instance, Gregorian chant and classical music, especially violins, calm, they could cause as much as 60% growth in plants, as opposed to subjecting them to really loud rock music. Plants ended up being all deformed and misshapen and not growing. So if they have that sort of effect on plants, how do you think they're going to have an effect on us as human beings?
So you want to sing to your plants out there and then make sure it's Gregorian.
As long as you have a good voice.
Right. You mentioned Vatican II, Trey. The Church, since Vatican II, has also put out quite a few documents that were really good documents on sacred music. And I remember going through those in the seminary, that we've take some of those, and they will time and again, Gregorian chant, polyphony, organ, that type of thing. The problem is, though, if you have a patrimony of sacred music that Holy Mother Church has for 2,000 years, you have a Pange Lingua that dates back to, St. Thomas Aquinas, and you have all these orchestral masses or masses that have already been, charted. There's no money in that. And what the people the Haas's and, Schuttes and others that put out these hymnals and songs, they're all making bank on getting new songs and new hymnals put out there and all this. So if you just say, well, the church has this beautiful patrimony, let's just there's no money in that. It's a terrible thing that the Holy Mother Church is not listened to and hasn't been for 60 years. And when you say, Vatican II says, like you say, Gregorian chants shall be given pride of place, polyphony, organ accompaniment, and even after that, many, many documents. So the church has continually spoken, but it's almost like a little whisper in this huge storm out there. You have to have people who are actually listening. You want a listening church. Here's an area that people could start listening, that says, okay, we're going to follow this, and we're going to put, but then you're just basically taking modern hymnals with all of the patrimony for 2,000 years. So you're not making very much money by doing that. So the people who are doing the hymnals and all that want to make more money. They coin their own songs, get people to play them, and then you have a whole idea, you say, why this song, this Marilyn Manson screaming at me or whatever. Well, there's a certain number of people in the pews out there who that resonates with. Remember when all these polls go out there? Like 70-80% of the people who are sitting in the pews don't believe all the church teaching. Mm-hmm. So have lived, different lifestyles or not, and haven't been in confession in years. So songs like that pacify them. It gets them out of that mindset of contrite heart, broken spirit, and that type of thing. They don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And it's easier for them to sit there and listen to this type of stuff. So you play that type of stuff. It panders to their state of being.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to encourage people to take a look at this. This is Treasury of the Church, Gregorian Chant, and this is actually hosted by the beloved Father Edward Perrone. We've done all sorts of reporting on him, but he hosts this, and of course he knows a great deal about Gregorian Chant. He's a composer as well, so you can actually see this on our website if you are a premium subscriber. But more on Gregorian Chant. I thought this was fascinating. In 1967, a doctor, a French physician and psychologist, studied how Gregorian chant affected a group of Benedictine monks. For hundreds of years, these Benedictine monks lived a very rigorous schedule, only slept a few hours a night, but they spent up to 6 hours chanting, like liturgy. A new abbot comes in, he changes the schedule, he cuts out a lot of the chanting, and then suddenly these monks start becoming very lethargic, very tired. And the more they slept, actually, the more lethargic they got. So they didn't know what was going on, so they called in this French physician to find out what's going on. And the physician figured out that it was actually cutting out the chant, because he said not only does the chant help to stimulate the prayer and the deep thinking and self-reflection, but it also energized the brain and the body. It had physical effects on these monks. And so they reintroduced the chant, and the monks gained their energy back, and they were able to go back to the same rigorous schedule. I thought it was really so fascinating, so it doesn't just have this effect on our brain waves, but also on our physical bodies as well.
The whole psychosomatic thing, that's a fascinating thing. Yeah, the whole reason why you're taking time off and sleep and that type of thing is get all your switches reset and all that, and yet you can have them reset just by the activities that you're involved with is really an interesting. So Holy Mother Church knows what she's talking about. Once again, it's proven that the patrimony of the church lifts your heart and soul, gets you in the right mindset, rejuvenates you when you're at Mass and that. This the other thing that we talk about is commercialized contemporary Christian music really just a grift? Is guys like this out there to really promote Christianity? You would almost think so, because it's Christian music. And we really see that. We're like, oh, this will be good. My son or daughter should have this album. They'll listen to it. They'll really like it. They'll get, a lot out of it. And yet he's not there really to promote Christianity. If he was, he would be living a Christian lifestyle. And because of the lifestyle, there are Christians by their love. Okay, there are Christians by their love. Well, you'll know them by their lifestyle.
Keep going, Brad.
By the fruits you'll know them. Dude, I grew up in all that.
I was ready to
single.
I thought you were going to let it rip.
From catechism class, I am special, can't you see? So when we're third grade, we're taught to be conceited, right? This little light of mine. I mean, my goodness, really? So the whole thing is, give me a ukulele. I'll jam up here. So all of that stuff is maybe, you're having a little drinking party with your buddies or something like that, and just sitting around just chumming it up. That could be a fun thing. But the idea that you're taking this the most sacred day, the most sacred time, the most sacred hour of your week spent with God, and that this type of triteness and this type of very mundane lyrics at best, if not almost always going to be theologically problematic, is really a problem. So you're acting, well, is this guy just out to make it? If he wasn't doing this, what would he be doing?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a sad thing that you would say, well, I'm just doing this to make money. Wow, you're presenting yourself as kind of a Christian preacher, prophet. Well, they'd be considered, I think, false prophets at the time, that they put out this type of stuff that you're listening to all this, or at least a Pied Piper,
I think it is fair to say that because when you think of Christian music, again, contemporary Christian music, modern Christian music, it's Protestant. I mean, that's mainly what we're thinking. So, it'd be a grift. I think you can call Protestantism in general a grift for the most part, because it's not true, and then people are making money off that, especially if you're doing the music. And then bring it into the Catholic world, Catholic artists and bands or whatever are trying to make Catholic music. Okay, again, by the standard. I hope it sounds good, sure, but it's got to be orthodox. It has to have a precise theology, the theology of the church. If it's doing that, fine, but I don't think that's what most of them do, so I think it's fine to call those things a grift. There's, I don't know, it seems like this whole conversation, there's two things going on here. You have the sacred music, and you're thinking of the Mass, and then you just have just music in general, which has also an objective purpose. It seems to me that music outside of the Mass should be pushing you to having that deeper faith, pushing you to going to Mass on Sunday or something like that. That should be the end. And I guess even in Protestant circles, you do have, I was talking to my buddy, I have two friends actually who are into Christian rap. And I've always cringed at that because Christian rap to me has always just been horrible, and just rap in general is horrible. And I was driving to Iowa a couple of weeks ago, and I was playing with the radio a little bit, and like a hip hop song came on, and I was about to change the channel, but it said something about the gospel, it said something about faith, and so I listened to the whole song, and it was actually, it caught me off guard, and the only reason I was thinking about it is because my friends, they tell me about it all the time. And it was actually like a good kind of hip hop song and the theology wasn't all over the place. It was pretty neutral, pretty good. And the song is called "Fruit of My Labor" by Caleb Gordon. So I haven't heard any of his other music. I don't know what he's about. So don't cancel me for this. But that song was good. And to me, it was an example. And the guy's probably Protestant. It was an example of the music sounds good, and the theology was pretty. It was decent. It kind of pumped me up. It kind of made me go a little bit deeper in my faith. Which is what music outside of, you don't play that stuff at Mass or something, but that's what music outside of Mass should be doing. It should be kind of, pumping you up a little bit, and he's meeting people, young people, he's meeting the culture where they're at, and he's actually putting a positive spin on it. It was pretty cool. Caught me off guard, but yeah.
Like you say, outside of Mass, it's a wonderful thing. It's a totally different track. You can be entertained and all that type of stuff outside of Mass, and inside of Mass, it's just not suitable. It's not dignified. It's not reverent. It's what we call profane in the common sense, that it's just outside of the sacred space of worship. But I would say a lot of people that have a problem with silence in general have a lot of time with contemplation, a lot of time with just aloneness with God. Maybe you haven't been to confession for a long time, things bother your conscience, lifestyle, whatever. You're going to have a problem with Gregorian chant. You're going to have a problem with the sacred music. You're going to have a problem with these sacred theological texts, because that's all going to do the same thing, which is bring you to a closer not confrontation, but a close-up one-on-one with God. I think it was Mother Teresa said the fruit of silence is faith. I mean, you get aloneness, and all of a sudden God becomes quite present. And that's why in retreats they don't want to have a silent retreat. When you have a silent retreat, all of a sudden everything becomes, very much, alone with God.
I think that's just one of the biggest problems in modern society is there's just way too much noise. There's too much audio noise, but there's also so much visual noise. We're always watching something, whether it's on this or TV or whatever it might be. Children especially, to the point of addiction, and children aren't being taught silence. Shut it off, spend some time, because you need that. For any kind of spiritual growth, you have to be able to sit quietly, because that's how God communicates to us primarily, is through the silence. It's not through all the noise and all that stuff, it's through silence. And when you have no silence in this world, then people don't know themselves. There is no self-awareness, there's no spiritual growth. It's a horrible problem. I encourage people to read The Power of Silence by Cardinal Robert Strahl, one of the best books I've ever read. But another plug for Gregorian chant is it's powerful to ward off demons. Exorcists have said this. They've said Gregorian chant, especially if it's chanted by actual religious, if you play it in your room or whatever, and you're having problems, like things are, whatever happening in your house, that will actually drive out the demons. They hate it because, for one, they're religious singing, who are devoted and consecrated to God, but secondly, they're singing praise to God. They're singing scripture, they're singing the rosary, they're singing whatever it is, and the demons hate it. So it actually has a very powerful spiritual warfare impact as well. And I want to just read a very short quote here from a Catholic writer named Judy Keene. She said, quote, "Contrary to the agitating sounds of hip-hop, hard rock, and heavy metal, Gregorian chant is instead a soothing balm for weary souls and a source of comfort for unsettled hearts. Inspiring and edifying, simple and poignant, this music of paradise slows our racing minds, renews our vigor, and eases the tensions of a harried world. Its ethereal quality elevates us from the temporal and transports us to the spiritual." This is why it's so perfect for Mass.
Yeah, there was a story also about where they had a problem with, I don't know if it was attacks, rapes, violence or whatever. There was a certain a park in the city, and they started playing Gregorian chant on speakers there low in the city park, and actually the crime rate went down. Wow. Nobody wanted to go there who was going to do nefarious things at all. And I really urge, exactly talking about the silence, I'd really urge parents to have a period of silence in the home. In the evening, we have our evening rosary, and then it becomes quiet at that time, and then we go into bedtime after that, and that transition between, okay, everything's going on in the house, everything gets kind of quieted down, we get our rosary prayed, and then it stays kind of quiet after that. In the monastery, that was called Magnum Silentium, the grand silence, that would happen after your night prayers in chapel, and really was only supposed to be broken out of extreme necessity. So we tried to keep the house fairly quiet and no big conversations and all this commotion banging around, and of course it's helping the kids go to sleep, and it helps us get to sleep, and all these type of things. So monitoring what your kids are watching and listening to, and the lyrics. So many parents are completely oblivious to all of that. The kids can buy anything online or watch anything on there. Here's a tablet and your TV in your room and your own phone. You can listen to anything and all this type. I couldn't believe that, but it's kind of a common thing. And also when you go over to people's houses, the TV's always going, and this is always going, and 16 different sources of noise are always going, and everybody's kind of oblivious to it because they're just swimming in all this noise all the time. So monitor the noise level in the house. Monitor what your kids are watching and listening to. Huge problem in the past. Kids have Marilyn Manson stuff, and they got their headphones on back in the day, and now the iPods or whatever. But the idea is that they're listening to all this stuff that's just like really beating their kids, and they wonder why they have all these problems with their kids. And then have that periods of silence at times, especially with prayer and bringing it in the evenings. With those things really over time.
You guys keep talking about silence. They're gonna turn the download off. So
yeah.
No, but it's true. I was on a plane yesterday, and it's kind of freaky. You sit there and you look down the aisle. Every single person, it depends what flight you're on, you have the screen right in front of you, and if you don't have a screen, you got the headphones on, you got your phone out. It's kind of even just walking through the airport, every single person has some sort of their phone out, including myself. You got your phone out. It's just how we're wired now, and I think that silence is a good antidote to that. So.
Oh yeah, the silence. Trying to get the silence inside the mind is extremely difficult, and if you're not doing it on the externals, trying to get a hold of it in the mind is just almost impossible. So it has to start with the externals, and then hopefully it starts to penetrate over time. Thank you so much for joining us for today's show. Now please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and the church. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules filii Heve. A te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos, ad nos converte. Et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris sui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, O pia, O dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Thanks again for watching the download. We premiere a new episode like this at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.